so
What are we
excited.
doing?
What do you mean, what are we doing? We're doing our show, Gary.
Oh,
Oh, yes.
huh. My Don Bulldog hat. I gotta put
Have you?
that up there.
You must have met him.
Oh, he's awesome.
What an incredible.
Oh, I
incredible
know.
guy.
I know. I mean, I feel like such a sissy next to him.
You're a sissy next to most people.
Wow. Oh,
Who is
God.
it? Who is it next to Don Boulder?
I know.
Just,
He's one bad. He's like that. Okay, he is one tough hombre. By the same token, he has humility,
Yes.
Well,
which is a
absolutely.
beautiful combination. I've met, in politics, I've met a lot of people who are very successful, but there's usually a bunch of arrogance that goes with it, and I don't care after that.
I don't know if you heard about that Lincoln Reagan dinner the Hillsborough County had, where the difference between
Oh, yeah.
where he walked among the crowd.
Yeah.
Talking
And he
to
talked,
them.
no microphone, and somebody mentioned he was addressing his troops. He was talking with his troops.
Yeah.
And that was like, wow. I wish I had.
That
You know,
I
wish
know. He
I
is.
had,
Confidence.
well, I wish I had a general like that.
I
wish
know.
I had a general officer like that.
Well, that's anyway. My guest, what's your name, Josh? Right? Josh is here. I don't know
I'm
why.
always here.
He's
He never
always-
remembers my name.
Well, I'm getting better, so it's only taken a year now.
A year on the show, but how long have we known each other?
That is a long
15,
time.
Gary.
15 years.
It's not a very big number, but
It isn't. Not compared to the breadth of time I've spent on planet Earth. It's only like a fourth of it, really.
we haven't even told the guests.
Oh yeah.
or
So our guest tonight.
the audience, what show this is.
Rock paper hand grenades. You
Yeah,
forgot?
welcome to Rock,
They
Paper,
wouldn't
Hand
forget.
Grenades.
I forget. They don't forget.
We didn't do an intro this time.
Wait, sorry. Yeah, I was getting excited. So anyway, tonight our guests are Pam and John Coughlin. Pam is running for is silly enough to run for state legislator again in Amherst this time instead of.
Yes.
Was that the same district though?
No, it's a total different. I had a flotorial one before.
Oh, okay, in Mount Vernon.
Right.
Now she's in Amherst, and her husband John, who's, I think I ran out of room on Facebook with your titles.
Well, Pam pointed that out to me. So I figured out what kind of show this was going to be.
Oh yeah, it's only going to get worse. But
I was looking forward to it.
so John was the county attorney, got elected county attorney
2002.
2002, and then we had the Iraq War, so he went to Iraq to help set up the court system in Iraq.
Well, the first tour was with the National Guard. I was
Okay.
with the 197th Field Artillery Brigade right out of here in Manchester.
Yeah.
And I was the Brigade JAG. So we got activated. So I resigned my position.
as a
and while-
county attorney.
As
yeah.
county attorney. And while I was there, it was 2004. So I was there for 2003. We left for Fort Drum in January 2004. I thought New Hampshire was cold. Fort Drum is right along northern New York, up by the lakes.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
my
you get
goodness
that wind
gracious.
effect there. Yeah,
Oh, it was cold. And we were there in January, February, into March.
75 feet of snow.
Yes, and uphill both ways.
Yeah.
It was. Frankly, we were glad to get to Iraq, where it was a little warmer. But
Right.
then,
Yeah.
and while I was there in 2004, Governor Benson had just lost his re-election.
Yeah.
And in that Saturday, he emailed me asking if I was interested in becoming a judge over in Derry.
Yeah.
So I came back for the public lynching, if you will, the public hearing was confirmed, and then
Right.
went back to Iraq. So I started sitting in March of 2005 in Derry. I was presiding judge in Derry.
Yeah.
And then in 2007, I volunteered to go back to Iraq. This, when you were referring to, I was in Baghdad.
Okay,
working with
okay.
the Security Transition Command to help them develop and reestablish their
Now, why
military
did you go
courts.
from Army to Marines? I don't even get that.
Well, I went from Marines to Army.
Oh, Marines to Army.
Yes, yeah, I was a Marine in the early
So you
80s.
kind of downgraded then, really.
Well, there's a lot of Marines that go into the other branches, and the Army was very good to me. It was a wonderful experience. So I joined the National Guard in 1999. I had been out of the reserves, the Marine Corps reserves,
Yeah.
so I wanted to do something parochial, something local for New Hampshire, and I thought perhaps maybe there'd be a flood. An ice storm, they'd
Yeah,
call out the
something.
National Guard. And little did I know, 2004, I'd be in Baghdad.
Right, not a flood, but yeah. So anyway, so you go. What was it like? Because I kind of want to. What was it like in 2004 being in Iraq?
Well, that was at the beginning of the war. When I got to where I was going is Camp Victory, which is adjacent to the airport right outside of Baghdad. We were still, it had been about a year before the beginning of the war.
Right.
So it was a lot, probably what they would call stability operations. Once you take territory, now what do you do with it?
Right. How do you keep
and how
it
do you
from
keep
going
it?
back into the hands of the enemy?
Right, and I was working, I volunteered to go into Baghdad because my unit was in the southern part of Iraq. So I volunteered to go into Iraq, and I worked with the Iraqis, and I was with their security cell, and I was given advice about their National Guard. It was the ICDC, Iraqi Civil Defense Corps, which eventually became the Iraqi National Guard.
Okay.
And so the Ba'athist Party, Ambassador Bremer was there.
Right,
And
right.
Ambassador Bremer was in charge, so they had all these orders coming out for the coalition. And that's what part of what I was doing, taking those orders as they affected the Iraqi, the ICDC or then the Iraqi National Guard, giving advice to the security
The
cell.
Red Guard. What percentage of them after the war kind of resigned their command and then came and helped the Americans?
Well, I think that was part of the issue is that the initial invasion, and frankly, it was General Perkins, then Colonel Perkins, led the third. He was part of the third infantry division. His brigade took Baghdad, and he was from. He grew up born in Goffstown, and he grew up in the Keene area. David Perkins, and he became the commanding general of the division commander when I was there in 2010, 11th, 4th IT. But he was a brigade commander, 3rd IT, and they took Baghdad. I think that unfortunately, what happened is that we had troops to take territory, but not necessarily to
hold it.
Well, yes, because the Republican Guard just sort of disintegrated. It's not as if we captured the troops and maybe individuals or groups of them, but they just sort of disintegrated into the population.
Right.
And part of what we were supposed to do with the 197th, we were field artillery. We didn't bring any guns over. We had 155 towed howitzers, the big guns.
Yeah.
But we had trucks. So we brought the trucks over, and they were being used to move ammunition because all the ammunition depots were just left open.
Oh, okay. So you can't leave that, yeah.
Well, it was like Walmart.
Right, yeah.
People would just go in and they'd take
Did you
whatever.
bring any back with you so I could get some? No.
But so what happened is that the civilian population, the terrorists, would go in there, and it was like Walmart. So they would take all the larger artillery shells. So you saw a lot of the IED making material was provided by these depots.
Oh, okay,
so
okay.
We didn't have the opportunity. We took the land, but except for the cities, we couldn't control what was going on eventually in the countryside. Even
Right.
though, so that was difficult, and then as the Republican Guard disappeared, sort of into the woodwork. And then that's where security cells became, the terrorist cells.
Right,
and
right.
The resistance, if you will.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for your service, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. We all do. Look at your service. You get paid $100 a year.
I earn it though. I think.
Well, yes.
It's on the edge, but.
Yeah. When my wife was in the legislature for 10 years, I told her she was overpaid. But
right. Wow.
Oh. Have fun going home tonight.
Yeah, I know. She's driving, by the way.
Oh, gosh. Well, by herself, probably.
I think it's a long hike back to Amherst.
Yeah, it is. So, Pam.
Yes.
Why did you decide to run again?
Well, I was the Hillsborough County Register of Deeds for 10 years.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So then I kept seeing what was going on up in Concord. And unfortunately, in Amherst, we always had 3 Republican representatives.
Yeah, Bob Rowe was one of them.
Right, he
and
was.
He became a county commissioner.
Right. And then in 2018, 2 of those got swept out, so we have 2 Democrats. And they're just voting, in my opinion, the wrong way. And not for the citizens of New Hampshire.
Right.
So that's kind of pushed me into it. And now we have grandchildren. I'm thinking, okay, what are they going to be, getting into and going forward? And so that's my basics.
Yeah, and they live in Merrimack, town.
Oh, they do?
So
Yeah.
It's important.
So, county attorney. What does county attorney do, John?
Well, it's a lot of times people watch TV shows and they hear about the DA, district attorney.
Yes.
That's what it is, except
Right.
it's called Hillsborough County. It's a constitutional office.
Right.
So you're basically responsible for all felony prosecutions in Hillsborough County. So when local police departments, they'll put together, for example, an indictment or a complaint, and then you present, the county attorney's office presents that before a grand jury. Because before anybody can be, well, it used to, you could be arrested for and held at district court or
Right.
responsible. That's the probable cause hearings. But they did felonies first, so now you go directly to Superior Court.
Right.
But you still, even though you're arrested for a felony, you still need, the Constitution requires that you're indicted by a grand jury.
Right.
Grand jury meets, you present the case before the grand jury. They meet secretly, and then they
Is that for
return-
all felonies?
all felonies?
Okay.
So all felonies require a
An
grand
indictment.
jury?
A grand jury indictment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as county attorney, you basically are in charge of prosecuting all these.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Did you hear about the county attorney in California? I
No.
think it was today or yesterday. Because the governor of California basically is outlawing all kinds of religious services and things like that. So he declared his county a Christian sanctuary
Oh,
county.
interesting, yeah.
And said he will not prosecute any of them.
Imagine protecting the First Amendment.
I know, it's
Isn't
weird,
that
huh?
wonderful? Especially in
Those
California.
types of decisions, are they left to the district attorneys and county attorneys? Do you you've done this before? Do you get a list of felonies and look at them and say, yeah, I'm not going to prosecute that one,
Well,
or
you-
I am going to prosecute that one, or I'm going to make something up for this one, because we're seeing that a lot in the news today.
Right.
We're seeing attorneys, such as the folks who were defending their home down there,
Right,
the,
yes.
Missouri.
yeah, down in Missouri. So the district attorney decided that she was going to prosecute these folks, but then the state attorney general overruled that.
Right, and
But she was making up charges that didn't exist.
Right.
So I guess that's what I'm asking is
Well, yeah.
what authority does a county attorney, a district attorney, what authority do you have to make decisions on who to prosecute and who not to prosecute?
well, it's you have statutory authority and a constitutional authority but you also have a supervisory authority over the local police departments,
Right.
and the AG's office has authority over the county attorneys. And I think there is some limits of discretion, but Hillsborough County is unusual because we have a northern district in Manchester, we have a southern district, so you have two separate courts.
Right.
And you want to make sure that people are treated the same in one court as in the other court. And what's important, and I think the AG's office started to do this when they took over the office, is to have some policies and procedures. So literally, figuratively, all the assistant county attorneys should be on the same page. You know, it doesn't matter if what socioeconomic group you're from, if you're white, black, Hispanic, French Canadian, or whatever.
Whoa!
You should all
that seems like
you should all
a
be
bridge too far. But
well, the French Canadian. My mother was born in Sherbrooke, so you know, as you know, a lot of people in New Hampshire with like Irish names like Coughlin.
Yeah.
You know, really, I'm more French Canadian than I am Irish because my father's mother was a Landry
right.
in
Okay.
Nashville,
Okay.
born in and her father was Napoleon, not the Napoleon, but
Oh,
a
okay.
Napoleon.
A
Landry.
Napoleon. Okay.
And his father was a Jean Baptiste
Oh
Landry
wow!
from Nashville too.
I don't think I have
So-
any French.
But I'm sure you do. A lot of people in New Hampshire have French Canadian.
yeah,
background.
I was. Let's see. I got Dutch. I think I got Dutch, English, Irish, and some others, but no, I don't think any French.
And it's amazing because this way I had a Meme and a Pepe. They lived in St. Johnsbury.
Yeah,
And I'd go visit them. And he was actually a veteran of World War I in the trenches. He was Canadian.
For
Army.
Canadian, okay,
Army.
yeah.
So it was, and I still have his doughboy tunic and his helmet.
Oh, no kidding!
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I was thinking about that because if you listen to we talk a lot about what's the way the news is being reported, and I pointed out, I think a couple of weeks ago, that the media keeps saying they're having these mostly peaceful protests. They keep referring to them as mostly peaceful when they're, blowing up or trying to blow up buildings, burn them down. They're trying to blind police and everything else. And I looked it up to find out, And I found out that if in World War I, they really only were in actual combat or conflict 5 to 10% of the time. So if CNN was reporting on World War I now, they would say things were mostly
It's
peaceful
peaceful.
in France today.
Well, that's probably true.
And it probably would be somewhat accurate, but
until all hell breaks loose and people are being killed by the thousands.
yeah, mostly peaceful war in World War I. Only a few million people died.
But I want to get back to
Sorry,
Josh's
yes,
question. So,
I get
and-
sidetracked a bit.
and I'm like that yellow lab, show me the tennis ball, but there is some discretion, I think. But people, the law should be applied equally to everyone, no matter who you are. And if there's a reason why you're selectively prosecuting, there's got to be a darn good reason. And you need, as the county attorney, I believe, you need to let the local law enforcement know why you're treating them differently.
So in the news today, there was cases where the rioters who busted people's businesses and were looting and everything else, the local attorney decided not to prosecute. I know there are different states have different laws, but you wouldn't have that leverage.
Let's take a simple example that it's election season. You allow me to put a lawn sign up on your property,
Right,
and somebody goes over and steals it.
right,
Do they prosecute? They should. They can. Because
Right.
one, it's trespass. They have no business being on. Two, it's criminal. If they destroy it, it's criminal mischief. If they steal it, it's a theft.
right, right,
So
right.
should you prosecute for those? Probably, because somebody came on your property. If you had a sign,
Yeah.
a Don Bolduc sign, for example,
I do.
yeah, and took it, yeah, that is a theft, and they should be prosecuted for it,
Right.
regardless of the party.
Right.
I know my wife Pam, when she was running in Mount Vernon, somebody put swastika symbols on her signs,
Really?
and
Nothing happened.
How the heck?
What
How
we're
the heck
seeing
does that
across the
even make
nation
sense?
There's a series of attorneys across the nation that are choosing not to prosecute, and they're just blanket
yeah.
letting these files sit and just saying we're not going to prosecute.
But I think
so.
yeah.
I guess what I'm asking is, how can that be allowed to continue?
I think
and
yeah.
why do they have that authority to choose?
Well, they're exercising discretion, but for the wrong reasons. I think it's symptomatic of the George Soros, where they're identifying in large communities. Well, you have it at Baltimore, where they're pouring tons of money into prosecutors who have a political agenda.
Okay.
And it's because of this political agenda they pick and choose. When I was a judge, and I might like the New York Yankees. I don't. I like the Red Sox. But if I was an umpire, I'd be obligated to call the balls and strikes. It's very simple. Being as a judge, I tell people it was the easiest thing in the world because I apply the law to the facts to the law. I may like one lawyer
don't
more
see
than another
judges
lawyer, but it
doing
doesn't.
that
It doesn't.
nowadays.
But that's the way it should be, and that's the way, at least with me, and I think a lot of other judges in New Hampshire, especially the ones that are appointed by Republicans. That's the way. No. I think sometimes people become activist judges.
Yeah.
And you apply the law and apply the facts to the law, and that's all. Wherever the chips fall, that's where they fall. If I'm an umpire and there's a ball hit down the right field line, and it hits the chalk. Is
Yeah.
it a fair ball? Is it a foul ball? It's very simple. It's either fair or foul.
Right.
Okay, you don't make it up because the Red Sox really could use this, and I really want to have a parity with this because the Yankees
We've
have,
seen umpires like that as well.
well, and they probably try to get rid of them. I hope because that's
Yeah.
not the way the game is played.
So-
Except there is human error. I
So-
made mistakes as a judge. I'm sure I made some mistakes. After I stopped being a
Legitimate
judge.
human error is one thing, and we have seen that in judges, and we've seen stand-up judges come back and say, "Hey, I made a mistake," right? But I think
yeah.
that's the exception rather than the norm
Well,
nowadays.
the example of Gordon MacDonald, he was nominated by the governor to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And by far, everybody spoke very highly of him. I don't know how many past bar presidents supported his nomination. And because he had been working with Gordon Humphrey, when Senator Humphrey,
Yeah.
and Senator Humphrey, as we know, is very very conservative. And because they try to pin that label on him as a young person because he was the chief of staff for Gordon Humphrey.
Right.
But so what? I mean, I'm sure it was an honor to be the chief of staff of a U.S. senator.
Right. Yeah.
Whether or not it's a Republican or a Democrat.
As long as you
but
judge fairly,
right.
It shouldn't matter
whether or not you're qualified. That's the important thing. And Gordon MacDonald, was he qualified? He sure was.
Yeah.
And now we don't have a chief justice. We have only 4 judges on the New Hampshire Supreme Court because politics got in the way.
Yeah, it gets in the way a lot up there. It's pretty horrible. So you to get back to your run. So we elected somebody kind of new to the position of county attorney in 2018.
Right.
And they ran into problems.
Well, he got swept in by Dennis Hogan.
Dennis Hogan
the county
was.
attorney.
Yeah.
He's endorsed me. He decided not to run, so that's one of the reasons why I decided to run.
Yeah.
And so we had a person who was not really experienced in a county attorney's office or running an office or a law office or a county attorney's office. So he got swept in.
Right.
And then he started to run into problems.
Yeah. And so one of the reasons you're running is just to put some stability back into that office?
Well, I retired as a judge because I was embarrassed by what was going on. Even more than embarrassed, I was really concerned. And my wife had mentioned our grandkids, and 4 of our children live in Hillsborough County. We live in Hillsborough County, obviously.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see, I want to make sure that people are treated well in Hillsborough County, and that when people commit offenses, they're held responsible.
Right.
That doesn't mean you can't be compassionate and try to be understanding, but people need to be held responsible and accountable.
What do you think about the recent moves for, I forget what the heck it was called. I think it even went through my committee and I don't remember, about letting people off who can't make bail.
Oh, the bail reform. Yeah.
The bail reform.
Bail reform in
Sorry.
New York. Oh, yeah.
That's been an issue.
Oh.
That's been an issue. I think the governor, they went back, and there's recent legislation was going to go into effect probably another 30 days or so. So I think they're trying to correct it.
Yeah.
And one of them is that you can't use financial inability as a basis for bail.
Right.
But traditionally, bail was, they would, as a judge, I would look at community ties. Is the person connected to the community? And is there a likelihood that they will appear at trial? Those are basically, and so you would often set either a cash surety bail so that there's some skin in the game. Cash surety where it means you have to go out and get a bond.
Yeah, in other words, if your mom's going to put up $100, she's pretty confident you're going to show up so she can get $100 back.
Right. And if it's a serious charge, if she's going to put the house up, whether or not you're going to be there.
Wow.
What about this bail reform in New York, where they're just letting everybody out with no money down?
Yeah.
So we got rape suspect gets released from jail over COVID, murders accuser. Sex offender free on bail, charged with new rape. I mean, this is going on consistently, and it's because of all these bail reform laws saying that, hey, these people can't afford bail, so we'll let them on their own recognizances, and then they have New York's an extreme where you're bailed out regardless of what your personal situation is.
Right, and the bail statute does address those issues of dangerousness or danger to the community. But when I was sitting in Manchester, Judge Lyons, who I went to high school with, by the way, sometimes I would do the arraignments. If he was on vacation. But on Monday mornings, the Manchester Police Department, because they have their own professional prosecutors, lawyer prosecutors from the solicitor's office, but they also have police prosecutors that do the arraignments. They would file motions to revoke bail, and the statute provides for the court could revoke a person's bail and hold them without bail if they meet a certain criteria.
Right.
So the Manchester Police, to their credit, and Chief Capano I think is doing a great job in Manchester. Those officers would come in on a Sunday afternoon, and they would prepare those motions and file those with the circuit court, district division, the next day. And I would hear, whoever's sitting would hear those cases. And if you met the criteria, you would hold the person without bail.
Right.
And so somebody, for example, is arrested, like you were talking about. Let's say there's there's an assault. One of the conditions of bail is that you not commit any state or federal crime. So now they get arrested again. That could be a basis, or at least a partial basis, for revoking bail. So if you had that and now they commit an alleged rape, now is there a danger to the community or to an individual? And if the court made a determination, yes, you could hold that person without bail. I don't know if those are being filed with the Superior Court. If they're not, they should be.
Right.
And if I become county attorney, we're going to file them. And if the clerk of the court says, well, gee, the judge really doesn't want to hear those, we're going to file those motions.
Right.
Because they're important. It's important to hold people's behavior, hold them accountable for their behavior. And if they're not doing it, then we continue to file the motions.
Right.
And then I think as a county attorney, we could go to the legislature and say, look, this needs to be reformed again.
Right.
And we need to start from scratch.
So
And-
that'll be
and-
like
and
easy because you can just go home and say, honey.
Or I can pick up the phone and call you.
So that's my biggest problem.
But
with
that's important to be. If it's broke, let's fix it.
Right.
Right.
That's my biggest problem with all these bail reform is the bail reform laws are coming out and they're specifically worded and designed to bind the hands of the judges who are sitting in front of these cases. And the judge has no choice but to allow these people to go free because that's the law, right? Like you were saying earlier, your job is to be that umpire, right? It either falls within these statutes or it doesn't fall within these statutes. And what's happening is the statutes are being rewritten. The bail reform is being rewritten so as to bind the hands of the judges and make it easier for these criminals to get back out on the street.
And that's one of the reasons why I was going to run too, because now I want to get back in the game. I want to be. I've enjoyed being the umpire, but now it's also I think I have an obligation, responsibility, part of public service to go back and do something about this. And for the people of Hillsborough County, I think they deserve better.
Right. So I want to get back to this business of stealing campaign signs off of Gary's front lawn.
Okay.
So
How often have you done that?
so you've talked about someone steals a campaign sign or vandalizes a campaign sign, they should be prosecuted for that.
Yes.
Right? Well, Gary goes a little bit further. He booby traps his campaign signs with fireworks and mouse traps.
I plead the fifth.
So the
The
question
fifth
is,
still works, right?
the question is, where does that fall within the law?
Well,
here,
with Gary,
right?
a confession is good for the soul, but it's lousy. But it's lousy for defense lawyers.
Yes.
So if someone is vandalizing his signs and is then scared off by these fireworks that he has booby trapped, what
By accident.
Who goes to jail?
Well, I
over
think that's potential civil liability.
Civil liability?
Well, if somebody's hurt
Right,
with the
right.
fireworks, or
Right.
and maybe
No, actually, I did. I don't know. You can Google it on YouTube. It's on my YouTube page or whatever. But yeah, I did make a campaign, booby trap Trump signs, so that when you grab the sign, fireworks blow off.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And it was carried on CNN. They edited it out and carried it. So there's at least 1 million people in the United States of America that think I'm crazy, which is true. So, but I had this disclaimer when I did it, and I said I don't know if this is legal because I don't know. Because I know if you do a booby trap like on your property to keep people from coming on your property and they get hurt, that's against the law.
It's a civil. I think it's civil, at least civil liability for damages.
So you either have to make sure you dispose of all the evidence, or you don't do it at all. But I don't know where that line.
Well, surveillance is good. Camera, you have a right to have a camera out there, and if you can get a photo of the person or the car, the plate. I think that's good.
If you get a video of them jumping and screaming with the fireworks,
Right.
well, that's just funny.
That is fun.
Well,
We'll bring that on the show.
but when he gets sued, it's good for the plaintiff's lawyer. to say-
right. But is crimes like that? Because to me, one of the big things we see going on in the United States today is a lot of stuff is happening, but people aren't being prosecuted. There's no consequences, so it continues to happen.
For example, I was at a meeting this morning, and Al Baldazaro was there. Al's a great guy.
I love Al.
And he was telling the story. He was in Massachusetts with his truck, and he comes back. He doesn't realize, but they key it. Somebody keys it. So I'm not sure what happened to all the issue of tolerance or all these things, but it's just just boggles my mind. If I see somebody with a Joe Biden sign on their car, I'm not going to get out there, wait until they go scratch their car. I may disagree with them politically, but I'm not sure where all this has gone. It seems to have gone so far over. And those types of cases, they should be prosecuted. You know, they talk about suppression of the vote and all this. Well, you're doing this to intimidate people. You're doing this. I'm sure there's a lot of closet people who support Trump and other Republican candidates, but they don't say anything because they're afraid of reprisals and retribution.
I'll tell you one thing that I'm sure you're familiar with red flag laws. I believe that one of the motivations for red flag laws is to suppress voters. I'll tell you why. Because if I proudly put my Trump sign out in front of my house, and my neighbor says, "Oh, okay," they call up and say, "Oh, Gary's really dangerous. He kind of threatened me." Da, da, da. They come and take my guns. Right?
Yeah.
Just the threat of that, because now I've got to. If a red flag law actually passes, which the governor thankfully just vetoed one, if that actually passes. And I have a neighbor because that's the other thing that's not prosecuted. After I get done, I want to ask you about is what is it when somebody lies in court? What do they call it? Perjury. Isn't prosecuted. And so somebody perjures themselves and says Gary did X, Y, Z. They come and take my guns under a red flag law. Now I've got to prove that I'm not crazy, which for me would be very difficult. But I have to hire a lawyer, and then a month later, maybe I get my guns back or get permission to get my constitutional rights back. And now I have to pay the town or city administrative fees to get my own guns back because they took care of them for a month. And some of those guns, so anyway, I think that the red flag laws, one of their, I believe, designed intent was to suppress vote or dissent, because anybody who puts a Trump sign out is now vulnerable.
If you're afraid
There's
of
a
your neighbor
presumption.
reporting
There's
you.
a presumption you're crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they would even put that in their petition. He has a Trump sign.
He has a Trump sign. Obviously he's
But
not.
there's a lot of things like that, and you brought it up. You know, not prosecuting perjury, not going after someone who keys a car, right? A lot of these are crimes meant to intimidate.
Yes.
But if you call up the police and the police show up, they send a squad car over, and the guy comes over, and the police officer takes down some notes, and he basically says, nothing we can do.
Well, unless you have some.
Right?
They're
They're not chasing down
Right.
these people.
Yeah.
And there's so many small, what are considered small crimes, but intimidation crimes, that just are not followed up on a regular basis, and it's slowly eroding all of our rights, all of our ability to speak out.
Yeah, that's a good point, and they should. I think the police should, and I think many do, take it seriously. But if you're in Manchester, there's a shooting here, there's a stabbing there, somebody got their car scratched. You know, what do you deal with? Because you're limited in terms of
Time.
resources and time.
Right.
What would you rather have them investigate?
Depends on whose car it is.
But to
doesn't it?
you, that's the most important thing in your life, because it's
Exactly.
now you gotta
Right.
pay
So
for the
there's a lot of people
deductible. Now
that
you
feel
gotta
disenfranchised by
Yeah.
the system because of these small items, right? I was actually the victim of perjury in a courtroom, and I proved it. Someone had doctored
Wasn't
a
me
court
this
document.
time, right?
Yeah.
They had doctored up a court document and presented it as evidence of me attempting to suppress their testimony.
Yeah.
And I was able to go to the clerk and go to the court, and I was pulled out the original documents and said,
And
"Here,
show.
this is obviously a doctored copy that this person is giving you," and essentially they just dismissed everything.
Yeah.
Right? And so in the end, what I got was what I needed, right? But there was an actual crime here committed in front of a judge, testimony to a judge, and submission of forged documents.
And perhaps the judge should have taken some action.
But no one did anything
To-
about
to
it.
hold the person
I was able
in
to
contempt.
prove that these documents were forged,
Yeah.
right? And so after the case was settled, there should have been a criminal case where that person was charged with forgery, and it didn't take place, right? So again, no skin off my back, but it's an example of something that doesn't get prosecuted because they just don't want to deal with it.
And the whole system, the legal system in court, breaks down if people don't tell the truth.
Right.
The whole system, people need to, and what we do as judges, we
believe me,
decide credibility. I had a similar situation when I was in practice. I was representing a landlord in a case, and I what I did is with the landlord-tenant writ, I hand wrote it. You can either type it, but I hand wrote it. And then when I'm in court, the tenants didn't show up, but then they're saying all these things, and I'm looking at what supposedly their receipt or whatever it was my handwriting. They had taken, I don't know how they did it, but they sort of copied on the computer the things that I had written.
Happening a lot.
And put it into documents. And the judge, I was trying to tell the judge that this is the same reaction. The judge didn't do anything.
Right.
And I was not happy with that. My client has to pay, he's a friend, but he, in a perfect world, he would have to pay a lawyer to do this. I don't know if I charged him. If I did, it wasn't probably much. But how frustrating can that be for a landlord who has to pay for a lawyer, and the tenants make things up? They lie to the court. They don't even show up, and then they file false documents.
Right. And never mind that. These false documents end up being, if they're accepted, they end up being a reflection on you.
Documents are the record.
Right?
They're on the record. Yeah.
And so there was, had I not been able to prove that this document was a forgery, and that I didn't actually create this thing, I could have been prosecuted for a crime, right? In the way that this was working out, right? This wasn't just it wasn't just an innocent, we're just, and if we get caught, big deal kind of thing. This was, I'm going to try and throw the other side under the bus, right? And so there was a risk to me if I wasn't able to prove this in court, right? But then this person doesn't see any consequences at all.
And the court does have, they have both criminal contempt and civil contempt powers.
Right.
Criminal contempt is direct contempt against the court. Civil contempt could be something like what, as you described, or they could always refer it over to either the county attorney's office or the local prosecution office.
Do you know why that isn't done more? Because I know if you look at a lot of the divorce cases and stuff like that, there is a lot of false allegations.
And some of those, in that case, are serious false allegations. Yeah. I mean, sure, divorces are nasty, and I'm sure judges don't like to deal with that on a regular basis. But the accusations that can come out of a divorce,
right,
true or false, can be really nasty. And if a really nasty false accusation is upheld, bad things can happen. Right. Why aren't perjury in those cases? And that's one of the biggest places where perjury is just brushed aside and ignored. Why aren't they prosecuted?
I think judges would say that it's not whether or not the allegation may or may not be true. It's whether or not they met their burden of proof. And so if an allegation is made against you, for example, by an soon-to-be ex, and I didn't do family, but if I hear the case and I decide in your favor, it's then the other side did not meet the burden of proof on that issue.
Right. But
so I might just say that but I could, I suppose, in an order, a judge could say there's no basis for this allegation, and it seems like it's intended to be intimidating and false. But I'm not sure if judges would go that far.
But I guess that's where I'm at. There's no basis for this allegation.
Yeah.
But at some point, this allegation is a blatant lie. It is a deliberate lying to a judge's face. And if I were a judge, you just lied to me. We can see that it's an outright lie. Why are judges not?
Well, they can do sanctions.
Wouldn't that be insulting to a judge?
They can do sanctions. They can sanction.
Do you like, for instance, when the red flag was coming up for what didn't go to my committee? I think that went to criminal justice. But it was one of the arguments was if somebody filed a false claim, that's perjury, and they could get in trouble. Do you know, as a judge and the other experiences you had, do you know of anybody that's ever been prosecuted for perjury?
Well, if someone, for example, makes an allegation of an assault or rape, and it's not true. They could charge them.
I know, but do
false-
they is the question.
Well, they do on occasion. I've seen where they've filing a false report with the police,
Okay,
and they do that.
yeah.
But it is is an issue of when they decide to take a case, their thinking should be, can I prove this beyond a reasonable doubt?
Right.
I think it's true. I think it's true. Is it a probable cause? Is it preponderance? Clear,
Right.
convincing? These are all standards of proof.
Yes.
The criminal proof is, as we know, is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
So you before you bring the allegation, you can bring the allegation, but are you going to win?
Right.
Again, limited resources. You want to make sure that you have. If the person says, "Yeah, I lied. I got that son of a gun,"
That's
and
actually
but it
something
depends
that-
on what the evidence would show.
It's something that folks don't consider very often. You, in your mind, you can see through a lie. You can see that this is something that is probably not true, but I think you make a good point. From a judge's perspective, from a prosecutor's perspective, can I prove it?
Yeah.
Right?
But why does the
Common
state,
sense
yeah.
tells me one thing, but can I prove it in a court of law? I guess that's the big thing that's frustrating to a lot of people.
And we got to remember too that the state has the burden to prove, and they have a really high burden of proof. The state has the burden
I'll tell you.
in
So
a criminal, obviously
Right.
criminal cases. But
I'll give you an example. This, and it's actually kind of cool because of my troublesome youth, I come at these things a lot different. When we started with this year, we go around the room like you, Pam knows. When you're a legislator, everybody goes around the room. Oh, I did this. I was in this law school. And they're going around judiciary, all the way around. And people have some great educations, and so it got to me, and I said, well, I've got a lot of legal experience as a defendant. And they don't know if I'm kidding. So anyway, one of those experiences was when I was a teenager. Okay, my older brother left 3 bottles of beer in the back of the Pinto, right?
not to date yourself, but yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing worse than a Pinto was a Vega.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the old the hatchback
Oh, yeah, the hatch- yeah,
Pinto, right?
yeah.
So anyway, the truth was, the cops where I lived were busting everybody, all the teenagers. They were going and searching people's cars, and they stopped me and they searched my car and they saw the bottles of beer my brother left, and I didn't know they were even there. I would have drank them, but I was underage. Okay. It goes to court, and the cop says, I was following Mr. Hopper down the road, and I saw the bottles of beer in the back window. Okay, well, that Pinto is angled
Not
down,
the Pinto you can't.
and then there's a step down of about, 8 inches, 9
Yeah.
inches, and then there's the ground where that bottle would have been laying.
Yeah.
So unless I taped them to the back window...
Or had luggage or something on top.
Oh yeah, or he's
Yeah.
got some sort of X-ray vision
Yeah.
or something. So it was a total fabrication. It wasn't even a good lie, and so things like that. I see that and I go,
Well, judges see through that.
yes,
common
but he
sense.
did see through it, and I was acquitted.
Yeah.
But it should be more than that. I would think a judge sees a cop come in and just lie outright in a court case. He would just go, maybe not in court, maybe after court, take the guy out back and slap him around. But I don't know. It's things like that
Well, the only
people
thing
lose confidence in this whole system.
I really haven't had that experience. We've had some good law enforcement where I've been sitting in Derry.
I think cops are a lot better trained than they were when I was
Right.
a teenager too.
And the only thing we have as lawyers, as judges, as police officer, obviously you two too, is our credibility.
Right.
Once we lie, once we lose our credibility, we can never regain it.
Yeah.
And it's very important. I would, after a case, for example, if defense won, like a DWI or something, and you had a young police officer, I do it with young lawyers too, you'd call them back and chat with them about their testimony,
Right.
and say, and talk about credibility. And sometimes the best answer sometimes is, I don't know. And I think where people get in trouble is sort of they try to make it up.
Yeah,
as they go along.
Right.
But because once the credibility of an officer is in question, and it gets back to their chief or their department, they lose their effectiveness.
Yeah, they also end up on the
Well,
lorry list.
and that's an issue too.
Right.
So I
How
would.
do you feel about the lorry list? Now that we've brought it up.
Well,
wait, back up. So the lorry, I know, but we got a lot of viewers might be tuning in for the first. So the lorry list was about a police officer, I think Nashua, who had something on his record
administratively,
that he did not reveal to the defense. So a defense, when I go before the court, which I do all the time because of all my criminal mischief, I have a right to exculpatory evidence, which means any evidence that might prove my innocence.
and affect the credibility of the witness.
Or affect the credibility of the witness.
Yeah, which would.
And in this case, they didn't provide it,
Right.
which made on appeal that person was acquitted because the officer's prior behavior was not revealed to the defendant. And they call that list of officers' misbehavior, so to speak, the lorry list, and it's kept quite secret, and which I think is stupid.
And I think so. Obviously, the police officers who are on that list don't want their names released, and a lot of prosecutors and attorneys, county attorneys, tend to not want that list revealed because, as you said, that means these officers, they are witnesses in the cases. Before that they bring to the court, they are witnesses, and so their witness testimony is tainted if they've got some administrative issues in their work history. So, but that lorry list being secret, even though it is a public list, I mean, it is maintained by publicly paid employees, and it is a list of information that we should know about the officers that are paid by our taxes.
And I think
so. How do you feel? Anyway.
Well, I think you, if you're a defendant, you would know. Your lawyer would know about it because they're required to provide that information because it's potentially exculpatory.
Right.
I think the real issue though is and I thought about this is where you have the lorry list. The police chiefs need to be able to discipline their officers and staff for minor infractions.
Right.
And it's important. I kind of equate it to the military where you have what they call Article 15, non-judicial punishment of the UCMJ. It's a great tool for commanders. So if there's a minor infraction, they don't show up for formation or something like that.
Right.
You could take action immediately against them because you need to have good order and discipline in the military. You could take immediate action. And they have certain rights. If somebody brings it, they call it different things. Navy call it captain's mast. So it's really different. But it's all Article 15 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So there are ways for commanders to take administrative action immediately to maintain good order and discipline.
Correct.
So the police chiefs really need that, and there should be some sort of objective standards as well, though.
Right.
But we know that the police chiefs sort of run their own shows.
Yeah.
But I would like to see some sort of objective basis. For example, who has the burden of proof? What do they have to prove? What's the standard of proof?
Right.
Is it a preponderance of the evidence that I find as the chief that by preponderance of the evidence that you committed this? You said you came in at 10:30. You really came in at 10:15. That's a minor infraction. So.
Right.
But those aren't the types of things that we're going to see on the lorry list. What I would
we're going to see,
I mean, we may see those. So those minor things, I have no problem with having that part of your work history be private and between you and your employer, right? I.e., your commanding officer. But if you've committed an infraction of a more serious nature, i.e., while in the process of arresting someone, or if you've committed an infraction that ended up in a courtroom where your testimony was found to be false, or
it's never. Yeah, but is your testimony necessarily ever found to be false?
Well,
as much as not convincing,
or deliberate, right?
Deliberately
or
false.
Deliberately deceptive action during an arrest or during the filing of a
police report.
Of a report.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing you know, this officer
I
has
think
been
that-
found to
yeah,
have
but I think-
deliberately done these things and has been reprimanded for that.
I think, yeah, but I
Right.
think when you get to that elevated to that, you're
that's
almost
the
getting
point.
fired anyway.
That's the type of
Right?
stuff that I
would
believe
think
is,
so.
is on the Lori list that, you
Right.
know, we should know about.
If it's some criminal activity, then police, like everybody else, should be held accountable for that.
Right.
You know, police should, you know, if I was I've been stopped, I've been given a ticket as a judge.
Right.
You know, I was using my wife's car and my
You don't
car.
pull the, do you
but
know who I am business. do you?
Exactly. And you know what my response would be, well, you should know better, Judge.
Right.
You know what? I paid the ticket. It was in
Right.
Bedford. And but you know, we all make mistakes, but people should be accountable for them. Same with the police office. If it rises to the level of criminal activity, then if the police chief of that department doesn't want to bring an action, a complaint, maybe the county attorney should.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think
to hold
that's
them
what
accountable.
I think that's what the public really wants to know is this Lori list hiding criminal activity or is it hiding minor uniform infractions?
Right. And each department has policies and procedures. If I violate a policy or a procedure, that doesn't necessarily mean it's criminal. Most obviously, it's not. It's administrative.
Right.
But if
Yeah, but something like that would also unlikely be considered exculpatory in any court case.
well, yeah, back in 19.
The other thing, in
99,
judiciary, we've been dealing with that for a while, and one of my pet peeves is there shouldn't be a list at all, because if you're prosecuting, because most of it's the AG, right? So if the AG is prosecuting something, it is most likely a murder case, or they wouldn't bother. They're not going to
correct,
bother
they're
with
serious crimes.
right,
yeah,
serious
very
crimes.
serious, yeah.
If they're prosecuting somebody for murder, they should be able to. They already have the authority. They should have looked into that officer's record to find anything exculpatory. They shouldn't be being lazy and relying on some sort of imaginary list. They should know if there's any exculpatory evidence, because they're about to put somebody away
Well,
for life.
My understanding is that they do know. They know who's on that list, and they've
No, I'm not. I don't think you. In other words, there shouldn't need to be a list for the Attorney General. They should be able to, if Officer Smith is going to prosecute Josh for murder, which he probably should. So, Officer Smith's record should have gone through to make sure that there's no exculpatory evidence. You know, because maybe if you looked in there, you would find out that that officer's wife used to date Josh, and there's conflict, and that's exculpatory, and they need to know
in any
it.
serious case of that type of nature, I would expect that the defense is automatically given the entire file of every
They don't, though.
witness.
That's my problem.
That's what I would expect.
Hey, Judge, Colonel, Officer,
Grampy.
Lieutenant
Don't say
Grampy, and Grandma, and the Honorable Pam. Thank you very much, guys, for showing
Well, thank you.
up.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
We'll see you guys next week.
Oh.